All right, everyone. This is the next episode of the Prop Tech Genius Show. And our next genius is Matt. Oh, Matt, I'm going to butcher. Is it Freije? Did I say that right? Free? Free.
Freije.
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 I see. Okay. Matt Freije. I just butchered his name. And I had all this time prior to hitting record that I could have asked him, but no, have not had enough coffee today. But all right. Well, so we have Matt, and we're going to talk all things, AC related, really cool things around Legionella. And it's awesome because it's totally preventable. And so I am Amy Palvido, and I am chairwoman of the U.S. Prop Tech Council. And this is my little show. It's my little show. All right, Matt, I'm gonna let you take over and tell everybody who you are, kind of your journey into where you got to be where you are today, and we're gonna talk more stuff about what your solution does. So let's take it away, man.
Okay, well, thanks, Jamie. Um, I'm the founder and CEO of HC Info is the company name, but most people know us by LAMPS, which is the name of our software.
Mhm.
LAMPS being an acronym. And we launched the software early 2016, started developing it in 2015. And the purpose of it is to manage water systems to reduce the risk of primarily Legionella, but other waterborne pathogens, and now even other contaminants besides even just pathogens. So it consists of content for one thing, like procedures, operating and maintenance procedures, for example, for water systems to reduce risk. And then the second component of it is training, online training courses. We're an approved school for a couple of different certification programs. And the third one, which is a really big one and growing one, is data analytics. So we have really robust analytics, not only for Legionella, but for other pathogens and many different water quality parameters. And then we look at relationships between those to look for insights in managing water. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what the software does, what it is for, and it's used by all different types of large buildings, not by home people, single family homes, but apartment buildings, hospitals, nursing homes, industrial facilities, commercial, lots of hotels too. So the so those are the end users, and some of those are also direct customers, but then we have a network of what we call partners, implementation partners, that sell access to the software and then help those facilities set it up. And they provide a really valuable service in doing that, because most facilities that are large, pretty large facilities will have any facility that is big enough to have a full-time building engineer there who
Mhm.
knows just basic stuff about their building, like where the water comes into the building, where the water heaters are. That person, if he or she uses a computer regularly in their work, they could set up a water management plan and the data analytics and everything in LAMPS. But most of them don't want to. They want somebody to do it all for them, or they don't have the time to. So these partner companies help them do that.
Yeah. I remember when we talked last, you sent me this really cool graph talking about how everybody's concerned about air quality, but 90, or is it 90? Something crazy. Like most of the diseases are really water related. They're not air related, right? And it was really eye-opening to kind of see that for sure. And yet it's the one thing that's I mean, I guess COVID brought in look, we weren't paying attention to air quality either. But COVID brought that kind of full circle to where people like the universities were putting in air scrubbers and all these other different things because they were so worried about COVID. But now it's like, okay, y'all, now let's pay attention to the water. Just saying.
Right.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, the people in our industry have known for a long time how serious it is, and in buildings. And um, recently we interviewed a survivor of Legionnaire's disease and invited our audience to to hear her story directly. And she had come to us, and she just was, she really wanted to get the word out, and
Mhm.
she was looking for some way to do that. And we talked to her a few times and said, well, let's just interview her and let her tell her story. And so we invited people to come hear it, and it was encouraging. We did it for two reasons, really. One was to encourage Legionella infection survivors, because so many of them feel alone, like they think it's a rare disease. And compared to a lot of other diseases, it is rare. It's just not as rare as people think. But so they feel alone, and once they hear other survivors that are going through some of the same things, even long-term symptoms, it really encourages them. And then we also wanted to encourage the facilities that are working hard when they don't have to, really, to try to
Mhm.
prevent the disease, to kind of put them in front of somebody who they're really helping. So that went well, but yeah, the comparison between like hospitalizations and deaths caused by water in buildings compared to air is really, it was surprising to me. I hadn't really looked at it. It was our senior technical strategist, David Swiderski, who did that in research for an article. He came up with
Yeah.
those graphics and everything, and it was,
I
yeah, it was really telling.
Yeah, no, 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 for sure. So let's talk about your solution and how you're approaching how to prevent. I mean, so a lot of people don't understand what the system does and what causes it, and then how like it can be preventable if you like paid attention to certain things, right? And so let's talk through that, and so people kind of know.
Yeah, as far as it being preventable, the CDC, I think it was in 2016, released, I don't remember the name of the publication, but they released the findings that from their research that I think it was 9 out of 10 outbreaks of Legionnaire's disease could have been prevented through better water management. Might have
Wow.
even been higher than that, but it was pretty much all of them. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is a preventable disease. It's entirely environmental. So it doesn't get passed from person to person. It is from the environment, from water. And although Legionella comes into a building through the public water system in almost all cases,
Mhm.
there could be rare exceptions, but basically it comes in through the public water supply. Typically, it's at low, harmless levels when it comes in the building, because the water's colder, and the pipes are bigger and everything. But it's in there, it's in the water, but then it gets in the building and it encounters smaller pipe sizes. So there's more surface area relative to the volume of water in surface areas where biofilm develops, and the Legionella and other pathogens grow well in the biofilm. So, and then warmer temperatures, and then sometimes stagnation. So basically the water management that needs to be done to reduce that risk in buildings is to reduce those factors, to reduce stagnation, the temperatures that are conducive to Legionella, or at least to manage those temperatures,
Mhm.
and nutrients for it, surface area. So some of it has to do with design, a lot of it has to do with design, but um, otherwise it's operation and maintenance of the building. So that's what the solution is. And I was in that space for 20 years as a consultant, both for facilities and then as an expert witness in litigation related to Legionnaire's disease. And once ASHRAE came out with, or looked like they were going to come out with standard 188, I was anticipating that, well, not just me, but a lot of people thought the demand for water management plans would increase significantly.
Mhm.
So I didn't want to try to build a consulting company, a large, to hire and train consultants. So I was looking for ways to put the knowledge into digital content that people could use.
Mhm.
And that's how the short story anyways, as to how the software came about.
So what do you monitor? What are you checking for?
A couple of things. I mean, the like Legionella and other pathogens, those are kind of like the bottom line test results. So
Mhm.
how is everything you're doing affecting let's say Legionella is the target pathogen by which you measure you validate, which is actually an ASHRAE 188 term, by which you validate the plan, how effective it's. So you measure the pathogens, but then we also, and it's not just us, but many different organizations can encourage monitoring various water quality parameters because it's important to monitor the conditions. Testing for, I should have finished that sentence, the conditions that are conducive to Legionella growth.
Oh,
So it's,
okay.
if you think of it like a cholesterol test, the doctor might tell you you need to lower your cholesterol, and you don't, let's just say you don't want to use medication. So the doctor suggests eating and exercising habits to reduce it.
Mhm.
And so you can monitor those habits, those conditions. If you do only the cholesterol tests, you don't know you don't know what you're doing to affect those test results. But if you monitor your diet, if you keep track of exercise routines, so then you can see what conditions are affecting that result,
Right.
then you can really solve. So both are important. If you do nothing but monitor the conditions, but you never test the cholesterol, you don't really know for sure if you're successful, right?
Hmm.
Um, so, but with water, if you're only testing for Legionella, which is very expensive, it's not fast. It's something that's done pretty infrequently, once a quarter, maybe. So it's not often enough, and most facilities don't do it at all, let alone once a quarter. It's maybe once a year. So it's important to get temperature and disinfectant readings. I think even at the point of entry, turbidity, conductivity, there are a number of different water quality parameters that can help you stay on top of conditions that could affect Legionella. If that answers. So you monitor the water quality parameters very frequently. You can do that inexpensively with handheld devices. We're connected. Our software is integrated with sensor technologies, which makes it especially useful because it's less labor intensive because it's
Hmm.
all automated.
Hmm.
So you just have to spend the money to buy and install the sensors. But once you have that, you not only are able to get the data more easily, but you get so much more data because you're
Right.
getting readings every 15 minutes instead of, I don't know, every couple of weeks, or how often they might be measuring it with a handheld device.
So how long does it take from like a little, you get a little bit of Legionella it comes in. How long does it take to where it's actually impactful to hurt a human? I'm just curious. Like maybe there's no right answer to that, but I mean, if how long does someone have to neglect their system to where they could infect humans? I'm just curious.
It's a very short period of time. So
Wow.
the answer isn't the same for every building and every situation. I don't know. I mean, I think in a environment with absent of other factors, Legionella might double every 12 hours, I think it is, something like that.
Holy
But
buckets.
but what so it'll multiply in the system pretty quickly.
Hmm.
And then also other conditions can affect it. Like if there's water pressure shock, let's say the water main outside a building breaks,
Hmm.
and it can introduce dirt into the system. But what happens most often is that just the jolt from the water pressure will shake loose films, and it can release tremendous amounts of Legionella in a short period of time. In fact, there was a study done where measurements were taken at the inlet to the building, the entry to the building, in the water
Hmm.
system.
Hmm.
And then before and after a major valve was opened on that system. And after the major valve was opened, the Legionella levels, I mean, skyrocketed, went from basically non-detectable to like 5,000 colonies, which is a lot per milliliter. And so that kind of situation needs to be managed. That's one reason, for example, that the sensors are so important, is you can catch an event like that you otherwise wouldn't be able to catch. There really
Right.
wouldn't be a way to do it. So it can it can alert you. We have alarms in our system so that somebody gets an email if an event like that were to happen.
Yeah, that was kind of when I was talking with, so I was talking with Christine McHugh and Matt before we kind of get on. She's on the board of ASHRAE for New York, and she was saying that yeah, water main breaks are kind of the largest source of Legionella outbreaks or whatever it may be. So it's just really kind of interesting. So it's so explain, so they're in a film on the pipe, right? And then they'll catch on the water. So on a break, so a pressure thing will all like basically scrub the pipe. So all the Legionella goes with the pipe, right? Am I simplifying it too much, or is that basically what happens?
Yeah, that's basically how it works. A way I've used to describe it is you think if you live somewhere where there's snow, I used to, not so much
Yeah.
here in Seattle, but uh, but if you park outside and you wake up and there's 3 or 4 inches of snow on your car, let's say,
Mhm.
and you it's intact, but once you drive off, the wind will start blowing that off, and that's kind of what can happen in a pipe is that even regular flow every once in a while will slough off some of that biofilm from the pipe. But if there's a jolt of pressure, it
Mhm.
can really knock off a bunch. And when that happens, those are conditions that have caused outbreaks before.
So, so what, so Legionella needs, obviously needs to be near a water source, but it likes, does it care what the pipe is? Like, is there is like cast iron it's fan? Like, is it a fan of PVC? Like, does it
Uh,
matter? Or just, I'm just curious, like, what does Legionella like? Like, is there a way to
that's a,
solve this without, you know?
well, not just by the pipe material, but that's a good question because the materials can affect it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a study done years ago and that compared copper pipe, steel pipe, plastic, and rubber.
Mm-hmm.
And the copper was most resistant to Legionella. Steel was second. Plastic was third. Rubber was by far the worst. So the
Oh.
rubber had nutrients. And I got in trouble before talking about this. I got calls from manufacturers of plastic pipe saying, well, theirs is different. And
Yeah.
they had, one of them sent me a large study, but it was in Swedish, so I couldn't read it. But they and honestly, the studies aren't perfect, but there have been a couple of studies that have
Mhm.
shown that same thing. The reason the studies aren't perfect is with copper, for example, if you're doing the test with a new pipe, it it's going to it's going to leach more copper into the water because the pipe's new,
Mhm.
and copper is biocidal, so that's going to reduce Legionella levels. Whereas if
Okay.
you were to test 3 years later, when the copper pipe isn't new, you may not get as much of the biocidal of those effects with the copper pipe.
Mhm.
But to answer your question, basically the pipe material can affect it. It can also affect what options you have for disinfection if you need to disinfect the system, because some materials will be affected more,
Mhm.
damaged more by chlorine or other disinfectants.
Mhm.
But so that's a factor, the pipe material. It's not really the main factor, but that's something to consider in building a new building.
Yeah, so the water management plan, so if someone has one, which we all agree they should, right? They should manage their water. Is it typically something that it's not, is it burdensome? Is it not? I mean, is it something that they just need to take care of once a month, once a quarter? Like or like do you just monitor what's happening and then they address it? Or is it something they do on like a preventative maintenance plan? Like what is it typically? I'm just curious.
We at my company and people who are familiar with water management, we would say it's not that burdensome.
Mhm.
Um, if you ask some facilities, they're gonna say it's really burdensome. But if a lot of it comes down to good maintenance, it comes down to things they should be doing anyway, like
Mhm.
keeping water heaters clean, for example, or that's beneficial not just to reduce Legionella risk, it's beneficial to lengthen the life of the water heater. So
Hmm.
if they're just maintaining the water heater per the manufacturer's instructions, then a control measure in a water management plan about cleaning water heaters isn't going to seem as burdensome, right? Because they're already
Right.
doing it.
Right.
If they're keeping their cooling towers clean, their basins clean, operating those clean, which they should do anyway for energy efficiency,
Hmm.
then for water conservation as well, then the water management plan isn't going to seem as burdensome because they're already doing those things. So if it's a poorly maintained building, it's going to seem burdensome because there are all these things they should be doing anyway. So so if you want to look at the burden, I would look at it as being what are the extra things they need to do beyond just routine maintenance. And there are some of those, but I think it's very manageable. It's very doable. It's not the water management plan itself isn't expensive in setting that up and keeping that up. It's just those maintenance and operations procedures. There's some sampling that needs to be done. Part of the burden, actually, in my opinion, and I'm just after seeing the response to ASHRAE 188, I won't disagree that regulation is needed to require water management plans because so many facilities just won't do them unless they
Yeah.
are required to by regulations. But if the regulations aren't written simply enough, the regulations themselves can be the burden. So it's not just what you're
Right.
doing to the water, but all the stuff you have to report to the regulatory agency.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm
yeah, that
surprised OSHA hasn't picked up on it. I mean, it affects employees, right? Just as much as it does the whoever else is in the building, right? And it's like who's responsible for the water, but at the end of the day, it's yeah, I'm surprised that somebody hasn't picked this.
OSHA came out was really one of the first organizations in the US anyway to come out with a guideline on Legionella. That was in 1996. They came
Mm-hmm.
out with that. And a
Mm-hmm.
pretty good one. And then they have cited facilities. And I don't know exactly the factors that they'll cite for, but if somebody has contracted Legionnaire's disease, and they find um, inadequately maintained water systems, the facilities have been cited. I don't
Yeah.
remember what the conditions are in which OSHA will cite. So they don't have requirements for it, but they'll cite if it's under what I believe is called the general duty clause with OSHA, where a
Right.
facility was not exercising reasonable care to prevent harm, something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but with all the yeah, I'm sure at some point someone's going to pick it up and regulate it, and then someone's going to have to manage this because it's a public health problem, right? It's not, and it's something that if you just maintained it and just watched it, that you could, I mean, it just seems so silly to me. Like, why don't you just take care of the water you're giving people? Like, you have to provide a water fountain. You have to provide one. Most codes, you have to provide one. Let's make sure we don't, get people sick. Just,
Yeah,
you know,
no, it should just be something
yeah,
that is done out of a good sense of responsibility and being good corporate citizens. But
for sure.
more and more states now are adopting regulations to require it. They're all a little bit different in terms of whether they require a water management plan for all the building water systems versus just cooling towers.
Hmm.
Um, and they're different in terms of what types of buildings, like in some states, it's just healthcare. In Virginia, it's schools. They have a
Yeah,
regulation for schools now.
yeah.
Um, and other requirements vary, but more and more states are adopting them. There are, I don't know, a handful of states now that have pending regulations.
Yeah. And I don't know the symptoms of Legionnaire's disease or what happens to somebody. It would really be cool to see that interview of somebody who survived. I mean, I'm assuming you ingest it, right? It's a bacteria. right? And so it does its magic with whatever it's going to do in your body. I'm not sure. Is it an autoimmune kind of disease? What happens? I'm just
It's contracted by through the lungs, getting Legionella bacteria into the lungs, which can happen by inhaling water droplets, whether you're walking by a decorative fountain or by a cooling tower. Um, People like me, when we walk by those, we hold our breath. Or by if you're in Las Vegas or Phoenix, dry climates where they have the misting systems, they might have them out on the
Oh
patio or by
boy.
restaurants.
Oh,
Uh,
I'm changing my behavior for after this
uh,
moving forward.
and hot tubs too. Even there have
Oh,
been disease cases contracted, not just sitting in a hot tub, but even being in the vicinity of one, walking by it. There was a well-known one, yeah, big outbreak. I think it was in the Netherlands a few years ago, several years ago now, 2005 maybe. That at a trade show where they had hot tubs on display, they weren't treated with chemicals like the ones that are being used. And 200 and some people contracted Legionnaire's disease, and some of them hadn't even recalled walking down that aisle where the hot tub was. They were a few aisles over. So it can be contracted by inhaling the water droplets and then also by aspiration. So if you're getting respiratory therapy or even just drinking water and it gets aspirated into the lungs, you can get it. So it's not by ingesting it into the stomach, because
mm,
the acids in the stomach will kill Legionella.
okay.
But but you can get it by drinking and aspirating it into your lungs. Especially, that's why smokers are at like a 121%, I think it is, increased risk, because the mechanisms, I don't remember what they're called, but the things in their
Hmm.
uh, lungs that would reject water droplets are eroded away, and so they're at an increased risk of aspiration.
Yeah. Well, you shouldn't smoke anyway, y'all. But but if this is another evidence that you should not smoke, then that definitely this is it. So that's crazy. So they have impaired lung function after, I'm assuming, right? And so it becomes is it COVID like? Is it what does it do? I'm just curious.
Far as the symptoms,
Yeah, the symptoms.
the initial symptoms anyway are very similar to COVID. In fact, um, it was discovered that cases of Legionella were being diagnosed as COVID,
Oh,
and then probably a lot more than we realized, but then additional tests showed it was Legionella and not COVID. But so it may start out, usually does start out much like, pretty non-specific symptoms, um, maybe flu type symptoms, but they can come on pretty quickly. In fact, you'll hear, I think it's in the video, her name's Jill, the survivor video I mentioned, which is on our website now. If at the bottom of the footer, if you click survivors, you'll get to it. But we cut the video from like, I don't know how much, 50 minutes or so of the interview down to like 12. So I don't know if that part ended up in it, but she was talking about her initial symptoms, and she was feeling really sick, and decided to come home, um, which she didn't typically do, but she was so sick, she just needed to come home. And but it can come on very quickly. I mean,
oh
it can get
wow.
worse very quickly. And her husband came home and found her face down on the floor of her basement. She doesn't remember how she even got down to the basement,
Oh
but
my gosh.
she passed out, and her face bones were bruised. And he thought at first that she had been assaulted, or he wondered. He revived her, and he asked her, did somebody come in and hurt you? So um uh so they could be non-specific, but flu-like symptoms, but then it's associated with pneumonia. So
Okay.
if there's pneumonia and then they test and find Legionella, that's how it's diagnosed.
Does it kill most people, or is it survivable usually?
It is people who have compromised immune systems in some way or another are more susceptible to it, and they're also more susceptible to dying from it.
Mm,
So in a hospital, among hospital patients, since most of them are more susceptible to infections and may have compromised immune systems, the death rate can be 50%
mm,
or higher. But
mm.
amongst the general population, it's like 10 to 15%, which is still pretty high, but
Still pretty high.
yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
young and healthy non-smokers can get the disease and have even had some long-term symptoms from it, memory loss, neurological problems is one pretty common long-term symptom, but it is a higher risk among people who are elderly, who are immunocompromised, which some people think of immunocompromised as being something really rare.
Mhm.
But it's been estimated that at any given time, 25% of the population can be immunocompromised. Somebody might be taking psoriasis, a medication for psoriasis,
Right.
or of course, cancer patients if they're undergoing chemotherapy or any kind of steroid treatment. And I'm not a doctor, but I'm not giving
Yeah, I
medical
know,
advice.
but you play one on TV, so there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you read enough of this stuff and you
I know,
know
I
that.
know. Yeah, for sure.
Um, but so even back when I was doing consulting and I would survey facilities and I would which you really shouldn't do, but I would open what's called a drift eliminator in a cooling tower and I'd look in because I'd want to I would inspect the condition of it, and so I would get the mist blowing all over me, and my antibodies probably built up to make me more resistant to it. And so not that I would be completely foolish about it, but I would be more concerned if I had a cold. If I were sick, because I knew I would, even then I could be more susceptible to infection.
For sure. Yeah. It's no joke. It's nothing to mess around with. Well, this has been awesome. This is such a cool conversation. And it's something that, we don't talk about enough, how the built environment will affect public health, and it does. And the whole water quality thing. So everybody should have a water quality plan. If you don't, you're stupid, in my opinion, but and you're affecting stuff. So this has been really cool. Is there anything else you want to leave us with that you think is people should know?
Uh, Not really. I didn't talk too much about our company, our team, but I would just say I want to
Go for it.
thank our team because we have a small but mighty team, and I just love them and love working with them. Um, so
How
yeah,
many
we
how
we're
many folks are on your team?
just seven on our core team plus a part-time bookkeeper.
That's awesome. And you
Three
built your
three
software.
software.
Where did you build your software? How did you build your software? It was all in-house? Did you do it that way? How'd you do it? How'd you build it?
We basically, yes. I mean, the initial developer who helped us was not an employee, he was an independent contractor, but basically working for us at that time. And we um we now have a team of three software engineers, our own software engineers, and who do a great job. And I mean, the software compared to what it was when we first
Oh,
released it is completely different, but
yeah.
are much bigger and more robust and just better in a lot of ways. But um, yeah, our own software engineers and then our own support team, software support, and then the software support team also does software testing. So when we add a new feature or function or change something, they go in and test it
Yeah.
in the demo environment before we put it on the live site.
Very cool. And then you're doing when you go do an installation at a site, you do the hardware piece, or you have your partners do the hardware piece and then you do the software, or how does that work? I'm just curious.
Well, to do just a water management plan, you don't really need hardware. They just set up the software. So our partners um, do all of that. They go to the site and they'll survey the site to identify the types of water systems, and then they'll gather that data. We give them they have a checklist through lamps that they can use for that. And then they just enter that data into the software. And it's not a lengthy process. It takes some experience to know what water system types there are, but
Mhm.
with anything, you get better at it with practice. But and then some of them will help with sensor setup too. If the facility
Mhm.
wants to do the sensor monitor. We don't sell any hardware. We don't do any of the site survey services either. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of our business model. We're very happy to partner with other companies and see
Same
them
here.
make money on that. So, but yeah,
So
so the partners.
do you sell to the partner, or do you sell to the owner of the building? Which one are you selling to?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
so in some cases, if the partner is gonna set up the plan, in almost all of those cases, the partner will buy from us,
Okay. All
and
right. Okay.
they'll sell access to the software along with their setup services to the facility.
Okay.
But in some cases, the facilities purchase directly from us, but
Mhm.
only about 10% of the customers. I guess that number is growing a little bit, but but it's still right around 10% of the facilities will purchase from us directly. And in some cases, they still will get help from a partner, but
Mhm.
they want more control over the purchasing aspect, and in
Sure.
case they want to get a new partner, maybe they're not tied in through the purchasing to that company, but most of them, 90% will buy through the partner.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's still kind of specialized. There needs to be some sort of knowledge around it, and probably their facility engineer doesn't have it. But it's not like he can't be trainable, right? On what he needs to do, or whatever that might be. That could be like the education part of what you're doing, right?
It's if it's a facility that's large enough where they have like a hospital or a 300 room hotel where they're gonna have a full-time engineer on site, they have the knowledge to do it,
Oh, they do.
but hardly any of them have the time.
Uh,
You know, when we first introduced lamps, we thought, wow, this is gonna be a great solution for facilities that want to get a really good water management plan um, inexpensively, you know, because they can just come in, subscribe, get the access to the software and set it up. And it is that, but they really, we found that most of them, they need the help just because they're so busy. They have so many things to do. And it's kind of like learning Microsoft Word. You know, it's not too hard for somebody to learn.
no.
But with any new software product, it can seem overwhelming at first. And, um, and so you tend to procrastinate and wait till you have a big block of time.
Hmm.
And, so we think, you know, we're happy to sell direct to facilities, but we really prefer to sell through the partners, especially the partners who do an outstanding job,
Hmm.
because they really help the facility get up and running quicker, keep up with their plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth it. If I were a facility, I would well, maybe not me personally, because obviously, because I know I'm familiar with it. But but typically I would probably hire that out, have somebody do it.
So part of your company, it's very mission driven, your company is. Obviously you're attacking a environmental and a public health kind of um mission. So when you hire your employees, do they tend to are they already on board with that mission? Or they when you like so when you let's talk about this because founder to founder, right? So when you're going to hire folks, do they get it right away? Do they understand it right away? Or are you looking for that? I'm just curious.
Most, well, we haven't done a huge amount of hiring because we only
Yeah.
have a small team, but that's why some people have come to us and want to work for us, is they want to be a part of something where they feel like they're really helping people. And that's not just part of our, I mean, that's the mission with our product is, you know, we want to provide software that people love to use to manage their water systems to, so they can reduce the risk of disease. And one of the software, the most recent software engineer um, was working at first half-time for Microsoft and half-time for us. With
Mhm.
Microsoft's knowledge, he had been with Microsoft for I think 17 or 18 years, and he had an old enough contract that allowed him to do that.
Yeah.
But then he ended up saying he just wanted to come full time with us, that he just wanted to be a part of something that, and I'm not, and no, nothing bad. I'm not saying anything bad about Microsoft at all.
No,
I feel
no,
they're,
no. Sure.
but he just really liked the idea of doing something that was helping people to protect health and life. But we also are really you know, we do talk about our not only our company mission, but our values,
Hmm.
our culture code, our culture values and conduct code, but also just the company's values too. And our employees like that, you know, one of those, we value people. We really, and we don't just say it, but we want our employees to thrive. We want to be a blessing to our partners, to our customers, to our suppliers. And um, and there are times where we make decisions, that's not even costly decisions to see that happen. Generosity is one of our company values. We want to pay our employees well. We want to, again, we want to see our partners and our suppliers make money.
Hmm.
Um, we want to make money too. You know, we want to grow at a profit. And so quality is one of them. So we want to is the third one. We want to grow at a profit, even if that means slower. We want it to be sustainable. But then also with the profits, we give away a pretty um, really as much as the IRS allows us to. We're giving away money to come alongside organizations that are fighting human trafficking, helping the poor, helping orphans, um, and that's an important part of it. So I think that the employees have come to us, yes, largely because they like what the software does,
Hmm.
but they also just like what our culture values and the culture we have amongst each other. And that's been a
Yeah.
big part of it.
It makes it easy to hire when you can just say, "Hey, this is who we are. This is what we believe in," so that it kind of allows the employee to kind of self-select. Like, I like that, right? So you're not having to fight that initially, right? You can just say, "Yeah, this is what we're all about," and yep, we're a startup, and it's you got to wear multiple, it's not for everybody. You got to wear multiple hats. You got to be able to do certain things, but this is what we believe in. This is our cause. And I think it's really cool when you have a cause like that, because then, they can rally around. It solidifies your mission. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of companies over time lose sight of what their mission and vision are. And your job as a CEO is to make sure that they always remember, but it's ingrained in kind of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to solve. So it's great, right? You're not going to lose sight of it. You're not going to go on and suddenly do, earth quality, or whatever it is. I don't know. You're doing water quality. That's your thing. You're trying to keep people from getting sick. It's awesome. It's great for sure. So, before we go, we all should like hold our breath during when we pass by a water fountain in Vegas. I understand that too. Like I'm totally doing that the next time I'm like going to ICSC or whatever. I'm like going to go like this. But are there besides Legionella? You said that there's other bugs in the water too, right? Are they you're testing for all of those? Are there, so you're testing for the conditions that could cause certain bugs to happen, right? That's kind of what your main focus is.
And the bugs themselves.
Oh, you're testing for the bugs themselves. Okay.
We don't, our company doesn't conduct the tests, but our software has the data
You track this.
entry and analytics and storage and reporting for all of that, and looks
Okay.
for insights really. But so Legionella is the main one in terms of causing disease, although mycobacteria and Pseudomonas are two others that cause a lot of waterborne infections and some pretty nasty ones. In a hot tub, I would be concerned about Legionella. In fact, when I was doing expert witness work, I don't know if it was in the majority, but I would say at least half of the cases were hot tubs at hotels.
Oh,
And that I was involved, that were involved with that, yeah. And it's usually especially the smaller hotels where they don't have the crew to dedicate the maintenance. But yeah, it's not just about Legionella, there are other pathogens. Our software has the analytics and data entry, I think, for, I don't know, 30, something like that, 30 different organisms.
so do you report out like this hotel brand sucks? Do you do that? Just curious.
I'm sorry, what?
Do you report out on on like the incidences and stuff like that?
Uh,
You track it, like,
we, we have for years, like summarized outbreaks. We don't write the summaries anymore because that was just getting to be too much work. So now we just keep the data, like where it was, what the source was, if it was identified, cooling tower, hot tub, plumbing system, or whatever. And a number of cases, number of deaths. We have that on our website. But but even when we were writing those summaries, even if the news article, because we only reported the ones that were in the news. If the news article would say it was such and such a hotel in this in a given city, we would just say a hotel in that city.
oh, you
We're
do.
not out to, make any enemies but in Europe they do that. In Europe, they'll post the names of hotels where cases of Legionnaire's disease have occurred and they have violated the regulations because
Blacklist them.
I can't think of the acronym now, but in Europe there's a travel associated Legionnaire's disease prevention organization, so they'll track these travel associated cases, and they will post the name
Wow.
of the hotel. I think one of the states is doing that now too in the US,
Yeah.
and I can't think of who it was or who it is, but
If you can't force it through regulation, you can force it through shame, right? I mean,
yeah, and I mean, and it can be really devastating. I mean, if it's a large hotel chain, they'll have the money to absorb it, but if it's a one-off hotel, many of them have been completely destroyed, gone out of business after a case of Legionnaires because it gets in the news. People don't stay there. So yeah, it
yeah,
can be very, very destructive beyond just the cost of having to remediate the water system and to defend the lawsuit that the
right.
person who got sick files or their family if that person didn't survive. Those are some direct costs, but then the brand loss, the reputation is where it really costs them.
So a lot of these, I would say, like there's hotel associations. Like there's a bunch of that kind of stuff. Are they not talking about this? I mean, it's kind of interesting that, you know, like the heavy hitters, right? So it's hotels, it's large. I mean, so the major systems are cooling towers, chillers, right? Chillers, people with chillers.
The cooling towers, the plumbing systems,
Yeah,
decorative fountains and hot tubs are
yeah.
the four main ones.
Before me.
Probably the most cases are attributed to the plumbing system use, but just because they're
Yeah,
every, so
yeah.
uses a faucet and a shower.
Mhm.
So those aren't responsible for the most outbreaks, according to the CDC, but are responsible for the most cases.
Yeah,
So an outbreak is two or more cases. And so if it's just sporadic cases, one here, one there,
yeah,
so
it's
those are mostly caused by the plumbing systems.
Yeah.
Why are those associations doing anything? To be honest, and I won't name the associations, but most not only do not make an effort or much of an effort to try to get their members to do something about it, they do just the opposite. They lobby against regulations because they're trying to protect their members financially. So if it's, and I'm not saying a hotel organization has done this, but if it's a hotel association, they may have some education on Legionella prevention. They may have sessions on it at their annual conference, but they'll also lobby against regulations to try to prevent their members from having to do these things, having to spend the money on them or having to comply with regulations. There's a very large
Yeah.
property association that is doing that. And even some of the ones for hospitals, they'll push back against standards and regulations because that they know will cost the hospital money.
That's so especially because it's a hospital and their first thing is do no harm, right? You know, these your first thing is do no harm. And you're doing harm because like, oh, okay, all right. Well, I digress. We squirreled. But no, it's all
Some of them are doing a great job
yeah,
they're
you would
really
think.
making an effort and even though they're strapped in terms of their personnel, in terms of money, and they're making that effort and I appreciate that. And honestly, those are the hospitals I would go to.
Yeah.
They our people have come across, and we've had people in the industry come across situations and they'll make a note of it. They say, I will never go to that hospital because they know of something that they've just flat out refused to do because of the cost. Now there are other associations, like ones that are not for a particular building type, that are doing a lot, like for Legionella prevention. Well, ASHRAE for one, of course, with
Right.
standard 188, and Association of Plumbing Engineers has come out with some really good information and documents on Legionella prevention and education for plumbing engineers, which have a huge responsibility for the prevention, the plumbing engineers. And then AWT, Association of Water Technologies, which is for companies that treat cooling towers and boilers. They've provided a tremendous amount of education over the last 20 some years to their group, have come out with a couple of guidelines and have really promoted Legionella prevention.
Have you seen anything from IFMA or BOMA yet? The Building Owners Management Association or International Facilities Management Association. Have you seen anything from them?
Well, IFMA, not that I recall. They probably have had something, but I don't recall. BOMA has when ASHRAE 188 first came out, and when the CDC first came out with a strong recommendation that buildings comply with ASHRAE 188 if they set up a water management plan. That was in June of 2016. BOMA gave attention to that CDC action, that CDC plea, but I won't say more about what BOMA's done, but they're not. I guess I'm not completely familiar with what they're promoting to their members. You can look on their website and see what they say about Legionella, or if they have anything at their annual convention on prevention. But
so needed, and it says, especially since it's so preventable, right? I mean, it's just one of those things that I just think over time, and if you pick up the torch, and if other people start picking it up, and you know, it's probably going to take just like one lawsuit or maybe 100 lawsuits or a big whatever. Somebody's got to get sued for something to happen. But now that people know that it's, mostly preventable, then it's just something waiting to happen in the weeks. And I hope nobody passes away from it. I hope nobody gets sick, but hopefully, this will create awareness for sure. Create awareness for sure. So, how can someone get a hold of you if they need to get a hold of you?
Just our website, hcinfo.com,
Okay,
HC like healthcareinfo.com. And they can get where they need to go there.
that's
And
awesome.
and there's an inquiry form. If somebody wants to reach me directly, they can just use that and it'll get to me through
Great.
our support team.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been really, really cool conversation for
Well,
sure.
thank you for having me, Amy. I appreciate it.